Good morning. It is really nice to see you on a Saturday morning, to see all these folks out and about. It is a joy for us. My name is Joel Harpold, and I'm the senior pastor here at First Baptist Church, and we're really glad that you are here. I got a lot of folks from the church, and I see a lot of folks from the community, so welcome. We're very glad you're here. If for some reason you need to find a restroom, if you go through the door on your right, the men's is right there in the hallway. And then ladies, if you go across the hallway, like you're going into the parlor, there's a restroom in there as well. So we're very, very glad that you're here, and really glad that Jerod's here. Been excited about having him come and share his story and what God's laid on his heart. Matt or Dave's going to introduce Jerod here in a minute. But what I'd like to do is just simply start and ask you to introduce yourself to somebody around you. Okay? Stand up, greet one another, and then we'll get back together and have an opening prayer. Okay, we're going to open up with a word of prayer. Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, we thank you for a Saturday morning, an opportunity for all of us to be together. I thank you for the time of fellowship the men had downstairs over a breakfast, for all of those that took a lot of time to make that breakfast. And Lord, we thank you for this time. And we hold this time into your hands. We lift Jerod up to you and ask that you just speak through him and move through him. We thank you so much for his life and his testimony, the instrument of God that he is. And we praise you for that. May all of us be challenged and encouraged this morning. May you be glorified by all that takes place. And it's in the precious name of Jesus that we pray. Amen. Who's going to introduce?
Thank you. Short version of the story. All right. Me and Jerod, for the most part, from about 15 to 25, inseparable. Then, we played high school ball, college ball, worked in bars, did bad things, did good things. But there came a point where I got lucky. I turned this way, Jerod turned that way. I'm not going to tell the story. It's his story. But I'm glad he's back, and I love him, and I'm proud of him.
I'm alcoholic, so that you're all here, and it's all about me, so I'm real comfortable. And I spent a lifetime chasing that feeling. And that feeling's what landed me here today. I'm going to walk back and forth while I talk. I'm going to explain to you why I'm doing that in a minute. But as a child, I had some learning disabilities. Reading and writing were really hard for me. Had a little bit of a stutter, a little bit of a speech impediment. And the reason those things exist is because I'm dyslexic. So you will catch sometimes that I stutter. But if I walk while I talk and I can keep my body moving as fast as my brain's moving, then it's easier for me to talk to y'all. I also am severely ADD, and if you went to school with me, you know that's true. So you got about 30 seconds with me, And then all of a sudden, you know, I'll hear an ambulance go by and I'll be like, wonder who got hurt? Who's driving the ambulance? So staying focused was impossible for me. Grade school was miserable for me. Kids made fun of me. I had to go to special classes. I didn't love it. And I was raised by two alcoholic parents. My mom and dad drank vodka every day of the week, 7 days a week. They didn't take Christmas off. They didn't take any time off. My father, and you'll hear a bunch of mixed messages, my father is the most explosive, violent alcoholic I've ever been around. And when my father exploded, it could last 5 minutes, it could last an hour, it could last a weekend, but it's like a tornado warning. You gotta take shelter. He's gonna break every piece of furniture in the house. He's gonna put his hands on my mom. And best you can do is take cover. Now, the mixed message is my dad's my first Superman. He's my first hero. Love of my life. He's my ride or die. So whether Joe was right or wrong, I did what Joe told me to do. And he ran things. My dad was a great lawyer. You know, my earliest recollection is skiing up in snowshoe, and I'm just a child in grade school, and all of a sudden they come and find my dad and they say, look, what's going on? And I'm like, Dad, what's going on? He said, there's a riot at Moundsville, and I'm gonna go in and end the riot. I'm gonna negotiate the riot, and a helicopter picks him up, flies him off the ski mountain. He's gone for a day and a half and comes back and continues our vacation. He went down there and negotiated the end of to get a riot to end. Man, that's pretty powerful for a little kid to see. Every time I left my house, I took on an identity. My identity was he's Joe Thomas's son. He's Joe Thomas's son. And everybody said, your dad's a great athlete. Your dad's a great lawyer. And I heard that my whole life. And here's this kid that can't read, can't write, can't talk. And man, it's hard to measure up. And I thought, man, it is never going to be as bad as it is in grade school. And then I went to Hayes Junior High School. And Gladiator School began. Don't get caught on the backside of that building where Larry Suffin is. Don't let Larry catch you slipping. About a week, and Larry got a hold of somebody out back. I've never seen anybody get beat up that bad. I was scared to death. I have always been the smallest kid in my class. I was 5 foot nothing. I didn't break 100 pounds. And I was ate up with learning disabilities. And I wanted an identity so bad I couldn't stand it. And I wanted my dad's identity. That's all I wanted is my dad's identity. I wanted to be a football star. Now, and you guys who know my dad did a lot of things, you know, and when I was in grade school, the favorite thing I could do is on Saturday and Sunday morning, he woke me up, he took me to Shoney's and they laid sausages and bacon. I believe you pick anything you want. And I'd go over there and load up my plate. We'd eat, then we'd get in the car and we'd go down to a bar. I'm not going to identify it, but you guys know what bar I'm talking about. And we'd sit there and play parlay cards. We'd get our bets in. You know, my dad taught me how to gamble and how to parlay things, how to move a point spread. So by the time I'm in 6th grade, I know how to do two things. I know how to make a screwdriver. I know that it needs to be 20% vodka at 5 o'clock. I know that it needs to go up to 40% at 7 o'clock. If he gets on my nerves, I give him a 90-10 split and send him to bed. I stayed in the middle of Hayes Junior High School. The breezeway is the safest spot. You will not get beat up on the breezeway. Help is on the way. Principal's office. My sister was in school with me in 9th grade. She said, you stay on that breezeway. Don't you come off that breezeway. I became the class clown because if you focused on laughing and what I was saying, you wouldn't make fun of me. You wouldn't beat me up. Now, my dad wasn't a real sensitive man, so there wasn't a ton of, Dad, I'm scared. There wasn't a ton of that at my house. that didn't sit well with him. But I made a few decisions when I was in the 8th grade. I actually got an A in gym, and I flunked every other class, and they held me back, and it changed my class. My class went from, graduating with the kids I've been friends with my whole life to a new group of kids. And I thought, man, it's going to be hard. It's the best thing ever happened to me, because I was underdeveloped and I was undersized. And, I thought, maybe I'll catch up a little bit, and those guys became great friends. That also was a great athletic class for St. Albans. So my second year of 8th grade, my dad got me a tutor. Her name was Vicki Woods. And I got a tutor and a speech therapist for having dyslexia. That's what my dad got me. And I would come home every day after school, and they taught me how to read and write and talk by holding up road signs and teaching me to read. Everything had to be color coordinated, and I had to get organized, because if you got dyslexia, you got to get organized. So social studies was always blue, science was always red, and I had a collar system. And if you're dyslexic, left and right are impossible. So when you say, hey, Jerod, it's on your right, I do that. That's my throwing arm, so that's the right side. So I wanted to play junior high football so bad, but I had trouble with the left and right. You got to go down the left sideline or the right sideline. Back in the day, it was right side was 2, 4, 6, 8, 1, 3, 5, 7. On defense, it's the exact opposite. So I taped my fingers, and my dad would write the holes. That way I could play quarterback. So when coach called 32 dive, I could look, it's on my right hand, I'm gonna open up this way, I'm gonna hand the ball right there. On defense, it's the opposite. So I'd flip my hands over, and it was written that way. And I was able to play football, but I was so small that my mother she would boil my football uniform and then dry it all day. And then we'd put my pads on at the house, and we would tape them, wouldn't we, Todd? We would tape them to my legs, because pants when I was so little. And I made a few decisions when I was in the 8th grade. One of the decisions I made is, this is my identity, I'm going with it. And, I just need to stay in the breezeway. And then one day after school, you got to walk through this dip. Bad things happen in the middle of the dip. The high school kids are down there, they'll get out on you. So, I was going through the dip, and I looked left and right, I didn't see anybody. I got about halfway down the dip, and here they came. A kid named Craig beat me to death, ripped my brand new ski jacket. I went home crying, black eye. My mom said, wait for your dad to get home. My dad got home, and I said, okay. Dad, Craig beat me up. He said, man, don't worry about it. Get in the car. We drove over to Craig's house. My dad knocked. He said, Craig beat Jerod up in the dip today. Craig's dad, being a good parent, said, look, Craig will be punished, and it'll never happen again, Joe. My dad said, nah, send him back out. We want a rematch. That man said, Joe, I'm not doing that. He said, send him out, or I beat you up in your kitchen in front of your wife. He got mad, went and got his kid. My dad said, when he hits that bottom step, you punch him. Don't you come off him till I tell you to. Man, I hit that kid. He beat me up again. We were driving home, and my dad slammed on the brakes. He said, boy, does it hurt. I said, I don't know, Dad. Yeah, a little bit. He said, boy, you can't read, you can't write, you can't talk. You better learn to fight, or you're going to be miserable. He said, you throw the first punch, and if I ever hear about you not fighting, he said, you're out this house. Man, I went with that. And everybody that played football with me at Marshall and in my high school knows that if you want to fight, we'll fight, and I'm throwing the first punch. And I did that the rest of my life. Sometime during that time, I was watching, like they would sell these 1999 wildlife videos. It shows a deer running and then the lion knocking him down. And I said, man, I ain't ever gonna be the deer again. I will always be the lion. And school got better for me. I got to hang out with what the popular kids were. You don't know what that are, but when you're 12, it's a vision of something. Man, I got to high school, and high school was good. If you flunk a grade, you'd be the first one to get a driver's license. And I thought, man, one day, I'm going to get in that liquor cabinet. I want to know why my mom and dad drink every day at 5 o'clock. So I got in that liquor cabinet and I stole a fifth of pop-off vodka and went down the lake and passed it in a circle with 3 of my friends. We all had the same reaction. We all got drunk. We all threw up. Those 3 said, I ain't never going to do that again. I said, I'm going to do it again Friday. The braces went away. The acne went away. The stutter went away. Man, I've been chasing this my whole life. You know, this is me trying to be part of you. Every decision I make is based on you. I don't care about anything else. I just care if you like me or not. That means the world to me. So that's what I'll search for. When I got to high school, my dad's drinking problem got worse. People in town started finding out about it, started hearing rumors. You know, my house was the house. When I was in junior high, I pretty much adopted Todd Polly. He pretty much lived with me. He'd come in on Friday afternoon and leave Sunday evening. You know, I had a kid in high school that his parents moved, so he just came over to my house and stayed the night. He stayed 4 years. His name was Benji. Benji moved in with me. My dad bought him a car and sent him to college. Then ultimately the military. But, you know, my house was the house. You know, my parents quit parenting when I was in high school. They gave up. They gave up. Now, I don't know how much of that is they couldn't do it any longer. I don't know how much of that was too late for that kid. I don't know what it was. But my parents quit. You know, it's not that they didn't love me. I had 2 good parents. For alcoholics, they were good parents. But they didn't say you can drink. They just didn't say stop drinking. And they started trying to teach me lessons. You know, one of the lessons that, you know, when my driveway comes around in a curve, we have 4 cars. So the last car is the car you take. And I'm always wanting the Lincoln because that gets 8 high school kids drunk. You get 8 high school kids in a Lincoln. But I'm always the first one out and the last one in. And I came home drunk in high school and hit the back car and it hit the next car and it hit the next car and it hit our fence. And I went on in and passed out. My father woke me up and he said, go get my chainsaw and my axe and get in the car. We got in the car and we drove out to Mamaw's house in Scott Depot, and my dad owned a farm across from it, and he would cut trees down with the chainsaw and he'd make me chop them with the axe. He worked me all day. My hands were bleeding. I get in the car and he said, did you learn a lesson? And I said, yeah, don't go out and get drunk. He said, no, you can go out and get drunk. You just got to work all day after you're done. And I rolled with that. I rolled with that. If you went to high school with me, you know I'm the famous liquid lunch guy. That means I worked in the office where attendance was done. And I would white out the days me and all my friends missed. And I would change them, but I would leave for lunch and I'd go over to the dog track and I'd bet the dogs all day and drink all day. And that's pretty much my high school. I was in and out of there. Now, I made good grades. You know, I made good grades, but, you know, I got caught on a few liquid lunches, got suspended. Did a few things, but I learned a scam I could do around town. I had a way to get my hands on a drink at all times. I could go to a bar and knock on the back door, and they would answer the door, and I'd say, Joe's at the house laid up drunk, told me to get a half gallon of vodka. They'd hand me the half gallon and say, tell Joe I'll see him tomorrow. And I'd say, yes, sir. We'd go out and drink. I started drinking alcoholically in high school. I drank every Friday and Saturday night, and I usually picked a couple days during the week. I was drinking alone in my bedroom watching ESPN 3 or 4 times a week. We had a great high school football team. St. Albans was loaded. Charleston High was loaded. Stonewall was loaded. DuPont was loaded. So the state championship's coming out of the valley one way or another. We are 5 deep at running back, and my senior year is going to be the year to end all years. You cannot beat us. Well, when I originally got to high school, I was a free safety, and I went out there to play free safety, and the coach grabbed me. He said, "Jerod, you realize Harold Wood, probably the best athlete in this school, one of the better athletes, he's going to be our free safety. If you want to play football, you're going to have to move up to linebacker." Man, I'm 115 pounds. I am the littlest player on the team. We got 120 players on my high school football team. And they start repping me at linebacker. If you're going to be a 115-pound linebacker, you better learn how to get out in front of a block. Because if you get me, I'm done. I had the fortune to play with the best high school football player in the state of West Virginia. That's Matt Downey, the guy who introduced me. I'm telling you all, there ain't a better football player at that time in this valley. Matt is good for 5 yards all day, every day. He's good for 15 tackles all day, every day. And I'm thinking, man, I just want to be Matt. Man, why can't I be Matt? You know, he shaves. I don't shave. He's got a goatee. I mean, he's so mean out of the locker room. Like, I don't even want to play with this guy. Man, all the cheerleaders running around him. I got band camp at my house. I'm like, man, I just want to be like Matt. You know, some people want to be like Mike. I want to be like Matt. So going into my senior year, I think, man, this is going to be a year to end all years. And it starts off great. And my dad says to me before the season starts, he said, "What do you want to do, son, when you grow up?" I said, "Dad, I want to play college football." He said, "Son," he said, "we ain't got no letters, and I ain't taking no phone calls." He said, "I don't think college football is going to work." He said, "What else do you want to do?" I said, "Dad, I really want to play football." He said, "Son," he said, "well, you better have a great year." So, man, we roll into South Charleston opening day, and every week, Danny Wells does a column on who's the best player of the week was. You got the winner, and then your 4 runner-ups. South Charleston, I block a punt, I pick up a fumble and take it for a touchdown, I intercept a pass, and I got 12 tackles. There ain't no way I ain't player of the game. I pick up the paper, Matt's got 15 tackles, he rushed for 200 yards and scored 4 touchdowns. And I'm like, man, you got to be kidding me. We ran a 5-3, and our linebackers were Matt Downey at 226 pounds, Mike Prayer, 210 pounds, Jerod Thomas at 155 pounds. We also run a variation of that called the 5-3 monster. The 155-pound guy's the monster. We accounted for, our linebacking core accounted for 30, 35 tackles every game. We were great, we communicated, and me and Matt played football well together. And man, we go on a run, great run. We got out in front of our skis a little bit and read some press where we were the best team, and DuPont reminded us we were not. And Stonewall reminded us we were not. But we make it to the playoffs, and we are the 8th seed. DuPont's the 1 seed. They're the number 1 team in the state. And this starts what should be the best year of my life. And the lead story in the newspaper is a picture of me and my old man. And my dad played middle linebacker at St. Albans High School 25 years ago in the state championship game. And now his son is going into the playoffs as a linebacker at St. Albans High School. The whole town's hyped, and it's great, and everything's going to be perfect. And we roll out on that football field. Game starts. They throw a toss sweep into the sideline, and I see it. Matt's hollering, "Sweep, sweep, sweep." I'm way out in front of this thing. I'm going to kill this kid. And he sees me at the last minute and cuts back, and Matt hits him, and it sounds like somebody shutting a prison door. Boom. Ball goes up in the air, slow motion. I'm going to score the first touchdown of the playoffs. I catch it on the fly, and trip and fumble it. They recover it, get the ball back. And a man in the stand says, "Jerod Thomas, you idiot, quit trying to be a hero." My dad was sitting in front of him. My dad turned around and said, "Hey, see you at halftime." And at halftime, he went out there and he said, "I'm not going to do anything to you today because Jerod's mom and grandmother are here." And he said, "But I'm going to swing by your house and I'm going to bring Jerod, and you can tell Jerod what you said." Man, we win the game. We win the game. I go out drinking. I drink all night. I stay at Matt's or something. I get up, we eat breakfast. I mess around all day. My dad's at home drinking, getting mad, drinking, getting mad. And I come home and he says, "Hey, get in the car." I said, "Where are we going?" He said, "Get in the car." We drive over to this man's house and Dad rings his doorbell and says, "Tell Jerod what you said." He said, "Joe, man," he said, "Tell him what you said." Man gets mad. A fight happens, a bad one. Happens in that man's house, in front of that man's wife and his child. The child went to school with me. And I'm thinking, this might be bad. This might play out really bad. I know the man got hurt. I'm the one that did it. And we get home. My mom's crying. She said, "What have you done?" And he said, "Well, your son just showed him it's the wrong guy, the wrong dude." Man, I'm thinking to myself, this might play out bad at school. You know, so I'm trying to figure out, do I tell Coach Smith or not? Because if I tell him, maybe I can still play this Friday. You know, and man, when I get to school Monday, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. By English class, my dad's paralegal showed up and said, "You need to leave. The state police are on their way up here to get you. There's a warrant for your arrest." And we go up South Charleston in the judge's chamber. My dad does some stuff, and he gets it to go away. But the damage is done. Damage is done. You know. So I go into Coach Smith's office, and I say, "Hey, Coach, can I talk to you for a minute?" And Coach Smith looks at me, and man, 18-year-old Jerod heard one thing, and 57-year-old Jerod knows what Coach Smith really said. But 18-year-old Jerod heard, "I don't like you." What Coach Smith said that day, he said, "Jerod, I'm not going to say anything bad about your father. He's the best lawyer I've ever seen." And he said, "But his drinking's out of control, and he's going to lose everything. And I'm afraid he's going to take you down with him." And he said, "So when I hear about you walking out of a store with a case of beer, or you knocking on the door of bars and getting fifths of vodka," he said, "it scares me so much, Jerod." And he said, "And I'm afraid that if you continue this way, you're going to end up in prison." I said, "Coach, I got this." And I said, "Can I play Friday?" He said, "You shouldn't, but I don't feel like you're the culprit." And he said, "So I'm going to let you play." And we played Friday, and I had the worst game of the season I've ever had because my mind wasn't on the game, and we lost. And man, everything changed that day in this town. The town kind of divided on me, man. I went on a date with a girl, and she said, "Can you pick me up down the street?" And I thought, that's weird. I said, "Sure." Then when I took her home, she said, "Can you drop me off down the street?" I said, "Man, what's going on?" She said, "My mom and dad don't want me to be around you." You know? Then I called my buddies. Man, some of their parents didn't want them around me. You know, I can tell you this. Foster's rode with me. Goodall's rode with me. Downey's rode with me. Some people didn't ride with me. But man, that's all right, because I'm an alcoholic, and when alcoholics leave the room, we leave the room this way. Grenade, see ya. That's how we leave every room. Man, I said, to my dad, he said, what are you going to do next? I said, I'm going to play college football. He said, son, you are not. He said, I think you can. He said, I don't think anybody will give you a chance. Well, they didn't have Matt Downey. I did. Package deal. Buy one, get one. Matt took me on every recruiting visit he went on. I went everywhere Matt went. If Matt talks to WU, y'all are at Goodwill Hunting when he negotiates the contract, that's me. You want him here, have to pay a little extra. And I thought, man, I can do the college football thing. Well, Matt got duped up there at WU. They moved people around, and at the last minute, Marshall's the last man standing, and Matt signs at Marshall. And I come home, and I say, Dad, I signed at Marshall. He said, son, do they know about it? I said, not yet. I don't know if anybody in here knows Coach Horry Banks. But Coach Horry Banks was coaching over at West Virginia State and got fired. And he was the president of the Black Coaches Association. And the only way that he can keep his job is if he's coaching somewhere. So George Chomp did him a favor at Marshall and made him kicking coach. Now he was to tell the kickers when to kick and eat rolls. Eat rolls. And my dad called Coach Banks. He said, Jerod wants to play at Marshall. Can you get it done? He said, I don't know. And he said, I'll come and talk to him. So Coach Banks is on my porch. And he said, son, he said, what do you weigh? I said, I'm up to 160. He said, what do you run the 40 in? I said, 4.8 all day, every day. He said, we don't have any linebackers at Marshall that weigh 160 pounds. I said, well, I'll play free safety. Used to do it in junior high. He said, we don't have any free safeties running 4.8. I said, Coach, am I trying out for the Olympics or would you like for me to hit somebody? I said, because I can hit somebody. He told Coach Chomp that. Coach Chomp said, yeah, let him play. But there was a catch. They did not need me for 2 days. I could come down when school started. And I said, Coach Banks, that's not a good deal. How am I going to start? They said, you're not going to start. Don't worry about it. And I said, okay. I got on the phone. I said, Matt, what time do you have to be there? He said, I got to be there on this date. I said, okay. Now, a couple things lined up for me good that summer. Tex Williams got the job at the University of Charleston, and Derek Christian signed an NFL contract with Buffalo Bills. And every time Matt Downey walked in the weight room, I said, what time are you getting there? He said, 9 o'clock. I showed up at 8:55. He left at 11, I left at 11:05. I got Derek Christian to meet me at Laidley Field every day, and I worked out with an NFL football player for 2 hours. I left there and drove over to the University of Charleston, and I scrimmaged with their basketball team. And Tex Williams would put me in, and he'd say, don't let number 17 catch it for 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And I'd play bump and run all over the basketball court. I got down to Marshall University, and instead of showing up the first day of school, I drove my truck down and walked in the dorm like I owned it. Where is my room? They said, you're not on the list. I said, you've screwed it up. I go to the equipment room, and everybody's got a little plaque. It said, Barber, Gregory. I wrote Thomas on a piece of tape, swiped it, and got in the locker. Man, that is so humbling, college football. Hey, everybody that plays at Marshall was Matt Downey in high school. Everybody's the best player in high school. Everybody's an All-American. Everybody's All-State. These guys can actually play football. They're not chasing a ball around. They're actually playing football. And I'm in over my head, And after 2 weeks, I say, I ain't doing this. I'm going to law school. So I called my dad and I said, Dad, Marshall ain't working out and I'm going to law school. Just like you, because I know he'll co-sign that. And he said, son, do you know how much college cost? And I said, no. And he said, well, I just paid $14,000 for you to be there. And he said, do you have $14,000? I said, I do not. He said, well, if you ain't playing football, you definitely don't. So play. He said, I'll be down Friday. And he came down and we were doing a walkthrough because we scrimmage on Saturday. He's doing a walkthrough. And they keep saying, Barber, over here, Downey, over here, Gregory, hey, 36. And afterwards, I'm eating with my dad, and he said, you will never play down at Marshall if they think you're number 36. He said, if they don't even know your name, you'll never play. I said, what do you want me to do? He said, knock yourself out tomorrow. I said, what do you mean? He said, when you hit somebody, hit them so damn hard that you're unconscious. I said, Dad, what's that going to do? He said, wait till you see the other guy. He said, go off, lose it, fight, do all you can. So I ain't expecting to get in the game anyway, but they put me in, and first play I hit a All-American running back, and we both lose our helmets, and I need stitches in my chin. They get the bleeding stopped and put me back in, and I hit a tight end looking back to catch a football. Let me tell you something. You look back to catch a football, that's bad. I get in a couple fights. And afterwards, Coach Tenuta calls me in the office. And he said, son, what are you looking to get out of Marshall University? I mean, what are you doing out there? What's with the fighting? I said, man, I just want my spot, Coach. He said, man, you got your spot. I mean, what are you talking about? And I said, I want a scholarship. I want a room. He said, you ain't on scholarship? I said, no. They pulled me in Chomp's office, and I got a scholarship that day. And then Coach Tenuta taught me how to actually play football. I mean, it's a whole thing, you guys. It's a whole thing. You just don't chase the ball as fast as you can. It's a whole thing. And Coach Tenuta was the best at it. And he taught me how not to waste time on a football field with false steps, how to read something, how to increase my twitch muscles. I didn't even know what a twitch muscle was. You know, and he's teaching me all this stuff. And he said, look, you're the backup, free safety, and strong safety, and I'm going to red shirt you if I can. I'll undo it if I have to. Just to encourage me. He said, but I'm going to send you on scout team. And I thought, man, I'm going down on scout team. Man, let me tell you what a gift that was. Mike Barber, greatest all-time Marshall University football player in the history. I don't care what anybody says. The best to ever do it. And if you need 6 points, I'll take him over Randy Moss. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Loving, dear friend. I got to cover him. All-American tight end Sean Doctor, Marshall University Hall of Fame. Got to cover him. I got to chase Ron Darby, All-American, Marshall Hall of Fame, all over the field. Tony Peterson and John Gregory threw the passes. In my eyes, my opinion, I don't know who the best quarterback ever is, but I know my quarterback is John Gregory. He is the greatest leader of men I've ever been around, and I'll do anything he tells me today at 57 years old. And him and his beautiful wife raised me like a child up there at Marshall, invested in me, and I love them. And then our other two receivers were just all conference. Don't worry about those guys. But I spent an entire year watching what the best in the business do. And I tell you what, man, I got to be a pretty good football player. Me and Matt drove to the mall on a summer day before football started. And Matt Downey said to me, he said, Jerod, one day on opening day, when we take the field at Marshall, I will be the starting middle linebacker and you will be the starting free safety. And I said, yeah, we will. Yeah, we will, buddy. I won the starting free safety position that spring. And when we started the season, I think we were ranked number 3 in the country. And opening day, Matt Downey was starting middle linebacker at Marshall University, and I was starting free safety. Now, I took on a role in Huntington. I am the enforcer, and my job is you don't touch my teammates. If you put hands on my teammates, you will pay, and sometimes I'll do it just because I enjoy it. But that was my role, and I understood my role. You got to have Mike Barber, but you also got to have Jerod. You know, so I knew when my coaches leaned in the huddle and said, hey, Jerod, we're kind of dead out there. I knew they wanted to see me fight because that picks practice up. And I became kind of like a hockey goon. You know, they would lean in and say, hey, we're dead out there, fix it. I knew what that meant. I knew what that meant. Man, and that got to where I couldn't leave it on the football field. I took it into the barroom scene with me. I mean, I literally became a little monster. You know, Dad wanted a pit bull. He's got one. You know, 155-pound Jerod can't hurt you all that bad. 6'3", 210 Jerod will kill you. Man, I loved Marshall University. Let me tell you something. You ain't got to go to class if you don't want to. Yeah. I mean, like, it's not like Mom don't wake you up. You can drink all night, sleep till 1 and practice at 2. You can do that. Man, I like that. So, something started happening to me when I was drinking at Marshall. I would have these lapses in time. Sometimes that lapse was 2 hours, sometimes it was a day. But I mean, I would black out. I later found out what a blackout is. What a blackout is you drink so much that it's like Mike Tyson punched you. And you come to when you come to. And I would come to and try to find out where my things were. I'd call people and say, wild night last night, right? What'd I do? Man, and the best weekends is when we were at practice on Monday and people were telling stories about me. If you hear Jerod Thomas say, hey, watch this, call 911. That's bad. I mean, get things like the bandage man. I mean, it's just wild stuff happens all the time. Man, but I love it. I love it. Man, we have great seasons. And Coach Chomp calls me in his office and he says to me, he says, son, I love you. And I think Chomp hates me. You know, and when you're fighting, you can fight anybody you want, except for Gregory, Barber, or Darby. Don't lay hands on them. You ain't allowed to touch those 3. But you can fight everybody else. And he pulls me in the thing and he says, Jerod, he said, I think you can have a great career here. He said, but I think you're going to prison. And I said, prison for what? And he said, man, the drinking and the fighting's out of control and you're hurting your teammates. I said, what are you talking about? I'm the one that fights when they start stuff. You know, they start a fight, I finish it. Every time I leave the house, I at least get an assault for a DUI or a public intox. If I leave the dorm, I'm getting charged with one of those 3 things. And I am completely out of control. The ship has left the building. Man, all the upperclassmen liked me, and those were who my friends were, really. I loved them, and as they graduated, it got harder to play at Marshall. You know, I miss those guys. I missed them. You know, let me tell you something. It's a lot easier to win a game with Mike Barber than, you know, Bobby Smith. And, you know, and I miss those guys, and my drinking had gotten so bad. We got a whole new coaching staff. And when we got that coaching staff, our 2 starting middle linebackers, Matt and Eric, walked into a bar and got into a fight and busted up the entire building. They were about to get kicked off the football team. It made the newspaper. Meanwhile, across town with nobody watching, I got in a fight with some bouncers at another bar, and people got hurt. And, the police knocked on my door, and I got charged with 3 felonies. Now, everybody's watching Matt and them, but I was actually in custody. I had hit a guy with a beer bottle. He got hurt. And I got a malicious wounding, an assault 2, I think terroristic something, from where it cleared the bar out. And when they got done dealing with Matt and Eric, Coach pulled me in the office. I don't even know this guy. I ain't even played for him long. He says, look, man, he said, I don't know if you're ever going to play football again, but you got to go to treatment. You got to get some help. He said, man, you're going to end up in prison. I said, Coach, I don't need no help. We didn't have cell phones. I walked down the hall, I called Rex Ryan. I'd met Rex and had a few drinks with him at spring break. And he had just got a defensive coordinator's job. You guys don't know who Rex Ryan is, I'm sure you do. He just got a defensive coordinator job down at Morehead State. I said, look, man, they don't want me here at Marshall anymore. He said, come on down. I went down there. There's nothing to do in Morehead, so I sat in Coach Ryan's office and watched film all day with him, with his dad, Buddy Ryan, on the phone telling us how to play defense. Man, I learned a lot about football. Coach Tenuta taught me how to run around the field. Rex Ryan taught me how to see one. And man, I played 1 season down at Morehead, and I had the best statistical season a free safety can have. If anybody's ever taught my numbers, I'd be stunned. But I led Morehead State in every defensive category. Made all conference, captain of the team, defensive player of the year. Great year. And I was absolutely miserable because I missed my teammates. I wanted to be in Huntington. Man, Coach Ryan said to me, he said, son, you might be able to play at the next level. Man, hey, what about that stutter now? And man, I don't know how much of that was Rex trying to be nice to me and say thank you for the season. But either way, he said, man, we're gonna put 15 pounds on you and try you as a hybrid between a safety and a linebacker. He said that on Friday. My father died the following week. And if you live with an alcoholic, you may not realize this, but an alcoholic runs everything in a home. If alcoholic's happy, you're happy. Alcoholic's sad, you're sad. But my dad is my ride or die. Right or wrong, he's my ride or die. You know, I'm telling you right now, I can still hear him. Jerod! Freezes me. And if he says sick him, I go. I got 2 skills in my world. I can drink and I can fight. And that's every coping skill I've got. I'm 22 years old and I can drink and I can fight. That doesn't translate well into the real world. Man, when Dad died, my world collapsed. I didn't know what to do tomorrow. But let me tell you what hurt more than anything. I was so glad he was dead. Not because I didn't love him, because I'd seen what alcohol did to him, and I knew today's the day that man finally got peace. That's all he wanted. You know, the only thing I got from where he died is his Bible. And he scribbled notes down the side of his Bible, and I could see the fight happening. I could see it. I can see the good versus evil, the drink. I can see it. It's unfolding before my eyes. And I was just so glad that tonight he got to rest. Tonight he didn't have to mess with vodka. You know what I thought? Who wants their dad to be dead? You know, what kind of monster wants their dad to be dead? Man, I was cleaning out his Lincoln and I found a half-gallon of vodka and I drank it all. Went into a blackout. I was at my dad's funeral. I do not remember my dad's funeral. I tell you, the only thing I remember is visitation. And I had transferred and went to another school. But when my dad died, there was light in the door and it went dark. And in walks Madison Sayre. It's the first man I saw when my dad died. My teammate. It's the reason I fought all those fights. Man, that meant something to me. Man, I get through the end of the funeral and I go up to Charleston. I've done some cocaine at Marshall. Not gonna lie to you. We had a few D linemen. One of them had a brother that was pretty good at distributing it. I hung out with two linemen from New York that were as crazy as I was, Larry and Peppy. And together, me and Larry were cowboy and redneck. Nothing bad can happen there. Man, I went to that bar and I said to the bartender, I said, man, you get an 8-ball? He said, I can. We went down to the beer cooler and lined up some cocaine. I did that 8-ball. And I remember thinking, this is it. That was good, but this is it. This, you don't feel nothing. I mean, that's what I'm trying to do, is not feel nothing. I mean, you don't feel nothing. Man, I do that 8-ball, and I say, hey, man, can you get us another one? He said, yeah. I did coke for 4 days. It's probably my third time using it. I'm on a 4-day bender. And I'm thinking to myself, this might be dangerous. This might lead to something. I'm good, I got this. And then Coach Ryan sets up all these things. I'm gonna meet at this field and get timed, and I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do that. Man, I forget that you gotta lift weights and run. And I just keep going back to that bar, and I'm like, give me some of that cocaine. Man, when all that stuff's ready to happen, I am 175 pounds. If I ran to that door, I'd pass out. And I can no longer play football. Man, I wasn't a great football player. Guys, I was a good football player. Good football player at Marshall University. I played with great players. I was a good football player. Man, if you want to play at that level, you got to be great and you got to do what you're supposed to do. You can't have 1 foot in and 1 foot out. It's not doable. Man, so my addiction takes off fast. I come back to West Virginia and I send him out. I say, go get me an 8-ball. And he leaves and he's gone like 6 hours. He comes back. He says, I couldn't find an 8-ball, but I got some hard. I said, what's that? He said, same thing, but you smoke it. I went down that beer cooler and I smoked crack. Let me tell you something, that hits a little different. You know, cocaine will take about 3 minutes to get to you. Crack, bam. You blow out and you're up in the sky. I mean, you talk about feeling nothing. I start smoking crack. Man, my addiction takes off fast. And finally, I'm like, I can't do this in front of all these people that love me and that I love. So I got on the road. I took this show to New York, cheaper, and I moved in with Larry Odell. And the only person that does more crack than me is Larry Odell. And after 6 months of that, I said, I can't do this. I moved to Cincinnati and I moved in with Rocky Croy. I stole everything in that house. See, if you want to do drugs and alcohol, if you want to do drugs the way they're supposed to be done, you got to learn how to lie, cheat, and steal. And I can lie, cheat, and steal with the best of them. I am a con man. You know, I do 3 things to you. I ask you for it. I tell you to give it to me. Then I make you give it to me. Those are your 3 choices with me. I will fight a chainsaw if you will hold it for me. That doesn't exist in my world anymore. I don't do the fear thing. So I think, man, somebody said, you got to get it together. And I thought, I got a great idea. I said, I'm going to get married. They said, well, you ain't got a girlfriend. I said, no, if I was married, I wouldn't behave this way. So I went to the Baptist church, and I found the prettiest blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl. She was beautiful. And I convinced her that I was the BBD. I'm the bigger, better deal. And I told her all the stuff Mike Barber did at Marshall, but I just used my name. And I got this lady to fall in love with me and marry me. She's a beautiful lady. And man, on our honeymoon, when we went to New Orleans, her mom ended up sending her a bus ticket to get back home. I gave the rental car, well, I didn't give it away, they took it. But anyway, for a wedding present, I laid out smoking crack for 5 days, and she took a bus home. And then I thought, well, man, that marriage didn't work. I know what I'll do. I'll get her pregnant. I'll have a kid. Surely a father wouldn't behave that way. Man, I caught the prettiest blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy. God, he was so pretty. I kissed him on the head, I handed him to his mom, and I went out and smoked crack for 5 days. What I didn't realize I did then is sign my divorce papers, because she'll let me abuse her, but she won't let me abuse a child. So I called my mom. I said, you don't believe what this girl did to me. Mom said, come on down here. You stay on the couch. I said, well, Mom, she's got a restraining order. I can't be within 150 feet. Go through all this stuff. Mom said, it's fine. Come on down here. My mom was living right outside of Lexington. And I went down there, and after being at my mom's house for 6 weeks, she got a restraining order against me and threw me out of the house. Final straw with my mom was leaving with her TV, 3 in the morning. Mom said, what are you doing with the TV, son? And I said, I'm getting it fixed. It's broke. She said, son, it's 3 in the morning. I said, Mom, don't make me take the TV. We don't have to go through this. My mom knows what I said that day, and I know what I said that day, and that'll always be between me and my mother. But we can never look at each other again. That I don't know. I threatened the lady that gave me birth. Man, I found out early in my addiction you can sleep in your car, but you can't drive your house. Lexington is the buy here, pay here capital of the world. They need 2 check stubs and a letter from your boss. Fax to them. I'd go over to the library, fax the letter over, go give you the downstroke on a car, and I'd move into that vehicle. I'd run all over Lexington until the police would pull me over and arrest me, and they'd return the car. I stole about 10 cars down there. It went quick. My misdemeanors turned into felonies. I have, in Lexington, Kentucky, over 200 misdemeanors. I've been charged with 12 felonies. I've been convicted of 4. But they don't care that you played football at Marshall down there. I don't know why. I told them, you know who you got here? It's Marshall's free safety, back in '87. They don't care about that. Man, my 1 week in jail turned into 30 days, turned into 60 days, turned into 90 days, and then I started playing with the big boys. Then I came up with a great idea. I thought, man, you know, the problem is I buy too much dope. I'm buying too much dope. So I said, I'm not paying for it anymore. I'm just going to rob them. You know, and I've set up drug deals and just beat the brakes off of you and take your dope. The problem is they carry guns. And I would show up at my mom's house, and there'd be gunshots all the way down the side of the car. Got stabbed with a screwdriver, stuck out the side of my head. I walked into the emergency room after all my crack was gone. And the lady said, what seems to be the problem? I was like, really? What seems to be the problem? I got in the homeless population at age 27. You know, I know where every place serves food, what time they serve it. I dumpster dive at Kroger, 2 o'clock on Tuesdays. Kroger throws all their donuts away. little bit stale. Find a microwave, they're great. You go in Wendy's, get a cup of hot water, empty the packets of ketchup in there, stir it. Crackers are free, tomato soup. You know, everybody's like, well, what's it like? Well, you know, you see the people in Lexington on the interstate holding a sign when the homeless community, we call that flying a kite. You can fly a kite and work 6 hours. That wasn't my thing. I like it quick. So I did Walmart parking lots with gas cans. And I took on the nickname in Lexington as gas can. There's no gas can. That's what they called me. And I was, you know, if you do a product long enough and serious enough, it starts to create mental illness. You know, so I would walk around Lexington talking to myself. You know, I just walk around talking to myself. I ain't slept in days. I haven't had a shower. I don't have any tomatoes, apples. I don't have that. There's no nutrition. My brain's shutting down on me. It doesn't work anymore. You know, and I see things that aren't there. And the mental illness is, it's getting bad. So I just walk around town mumbling, carrying a gas can, asking for $2. Man. Now, I was raised by a lawyer, so I'm pretty good in court. I should have done a lot more time than I did. But I keep getting arrested, and all these judges are tired of me. And each time they keep trying to teach me a lesson, and I can't learn it. You know, now I had some moments of sobriety, and if you question whether I'm a good talker or not, I am a homeless felon and got the top lawyer in Lexington, Kentucky to marry me. I can talk. I went into an AA meeting, and here's this lady, does all this free legal work. Everybody loves this lady. And man, I dug in. Hey, made her a bunch of promises. And I told her, the last time they arrest me, this is it. I'll never be arrested again. I'm cured. We need to get married. She said, okay. So we went down to the beach and got married. I came back and started my probation. I was on probation for 27 years. I've been on probation 27 years, never came off. And I just kept getting charges, and they just kept rolling it over. So I married this beautiful lawyer. Man, she found out it was a bad decision. And I went out, started using, and she changed the locks and filed for divorce. Anyway, I decided I can't do this no more. And I was getting ready to agree to do a 4-year prison term on a distributing charge. I don't distribute any, guys, I'm a consumer. I don't sell nothing, but they got me. It was weighed this much. And anyway, I'm about to do 4 years, and I'm sitting in a jail cell. And I decided, man, I don't want to do the 4, and I can't get sober, and there's one way out of this. I'm going to kill myself. That's what I'm going to do. I'm done. I'm out. Done enough. I don't like it down here anyway. So I file a motion on a legal pad to get out on a Friday morning and return to do my 4 years on Monday morning. I was going to close out my affairs. I was going to see my son. I was going to tell him goodbye. I was going to shut down my checking account, let my landlord know I was moving. There's a problem, guys. I'm not allowed to see my kid, and I don't have a house. I don't rent a house. I'm homeless. And they let me out. Judge Isaac, sweet lady. I've been in front of her 3 times. She says, I'm going to let you out, Jerod. Be back at the jail at Sunday at 7. And I'm going to blow my brains out. So I get a pistol, and I buy some crack, and I pull up behind these railroad tracks, and the gun's loaded, and I do a hit, and I put the gun on my head, and I'm just about to pull the trigger, and all of a sudden the lights there, where the police pulled up behind me. Badges, lights, everybody shouting. I got this gun in my hand, and they're and I'm like, well, I got suicide by cop. I'm trying to decide, do I get out and point it towards them, and that ends this thing? Is it over then? Man, I dropped the gun, and if you're a felon, you ain't supposed to have a firearm. I also have 3 felonies, so that's an enhancer. So the first offer it's going to be 18 years. I got to do 18 years. Now, I haven't been to arraignment yet, but they dragged me into Judge Isaac's courtroom, and she's looking at me, man, I can see it. Man, I can see that she's mad. She's 5 foot, 105 pounds, and she's trying not to lose it. You know, she don't want to be unprofessional, but man, she's mad. And I say, Judge, can I speak? Wrong. That was wrong. She jumps up and screams at me. She said, Jerod Thomas, you're the biggest waste of talent I've ever seen. She said, you're the best lawyer that's ever been in my courtroom, and you don't even have a law degree. She said, you suck all the oxygen out of the room, and all you do is take. And you are a loser, and I am done. Get him out of my face. And they drag me out, and I go back to the jail cell. I mean, I've been in a bunch of jail cells. I mean, I've been in prison now for about 12 years. And I get back to my room, and I collapse on the floor, and I start crying like a baby. And somebody in my plot said, what's wrong, you scared? I said, I'm scared to death. I said, man, I want to be a father, and I don't know how. I want to be a citizen, and I don't know how. I want to be part of something that's bigger than me, that makes sense. I've been on the world for 39 years, and I've done nothing. This world's no better because I'm in it. I am a consumer. I take all that you will give me, and I will never be full. I will never be full. There's not enough sex. There's not enough drugs. There's not enough gambling. I will never be full. Man, I cried out to God that night with all I had. And I said one prayer over and over again. I'll get back to what that prayer was. And I thought, man, I better call my grandmother. I love Opal Thomas with all my heart. Only normal person that's ever been in my life. Everybody else is nuts in my life. I mean, I don't hang out with people if you ain't nuts. I mean, my whole life looks like my dad and Odell. But not my grandmother. And I called her and I said, man, Mom, I'm going away for a long time and I love you. And she said, son, why didn't you go to church? And I said, man, Mom, if you think it was as simple as walking into church, you don't think I would have went a long time ago? I said, it ain't like that for me, Mama. It's like that for everybody else, but not for me. She said, why? And I said, I don't know. I love you. And I went back to my bunk and I wrote down every reason why I couldn't get sober. And I called my mama the next night. I said, here it is, mama. I don't have a car. Don't have a job, don't have a driver's license, don't have a social security card. I don't have nothing. Nobody will hire me. I've been convicted of 4 felons. And my mama says to me in the calmest voice, she said, seems like a fella that could get people over all those obstacles would be onto something pretty special. I said, I bet, mama. I bet. And I left that list in my notebook. They opened up my cell door 2 days later. They've done what's called a PSI. You guys probably don't know what that is. It's called a pre-sentence investigation. Basically, they want to know who you are. So they can decide how much time to give you based on who you are as a person. Who are you as a person? Who is Jerod Thomas really? And then let's decide how much time we should give him. Man, they don't realize I get that PSI, the people that get interviewed. So where my mom's said, his dad died, he never recovered. Cade's mother said, I don't want him around me. He's the most violent, vicious, mean-spirited human being I've ever seen. He has no business raising kids. You know, and it's just, I mean, they're all the way back into my teachers. It's things this thick. So they pulled me out of my cell. They said, you're going to court. I said, why am I going to court? But I'm not on the docket. They said, Judge Isaacs asked for you special. And I go over there. Judge Isaacs says, clear the courtroom. Everybody leaves. Bailiff, it's me and Judge Isaacs one-on-one. She said, son, I want to apologize for what I said to you in court. I should never have called you those things. I said, Judge, we're good. I said, they're all true. I said, I'm good. She's got my PSI report, and it's like a Los Angeles phone book. And basically it says in there, he is a violent, drug-addicted felon. 39 years on this earth, and I am a violent, drug-addicted felon. That's all I am. Not a Marshall football player. I'm not Matt's best friend. I'm none of those things. I'm just that. Man, it killed me. And Judge Isaac says, I'm not going to send you to prison. I said, what are you going to do? She said, I'm going to send you to treatment. I said, I don't work. She said, what else you got going on? I said, nothing. I'm wide open. I'm wide open. I got more time than money. Let's do it. And I turned to walk out of the courtroom, and it's just me and her, and I got to know. I got to know. I turn around. I said, Judge Isaacs, why are you doing this? She says, because I love you. I said, what? She said, I love you. She said, God don't make junk. And I think you're going to change the world. See, she read that phone book, and she chose to love me anyway. And that's all I ever wanted, is for you to love me anyway. I just wanted somebody to love me anyway. I didn't want you to see the learning disabilities. I didn't want to be Dad's disappointment. I wanted to be a Marshall football player. That's all I wanted. And I knew if I never let anybody touch Mike Barber, he'd love me. Man, they take me to this Department of Corrections treatment center on an island. I am out in eastern Kentucky. You can hear dueling banjos. It's bad. And there is 90 felons in the building. 20 feds, 70 state. 90 inmates. And I'm telling you, I'm the only one ain't got a teardrop on his cheek. I'm the only one. Everybody else is all the way down, sleeved out. This guy's in here for manslaughter. This guy shot up a liquor store. I wrote a few bad checks, people. It's a little bit much. Man, I'm good in treatment. I've been to a bunch of them. I know how to play. I know what they want to hear. After 30 days, they said, you're ready to graduate. And I called Judge Isaacs. I said, man. I said, Bo, you saved my life, Judge. I said, I'm going to be coming back to Lexington. I just want to invite you to graduation. She said, son, you ain't graduating, but I love you. Hung up on me. I called her after 60 days. Said, Judge, come on down for graduation. She said, you ain't graduating, but I love you. Hung up on me. She left me in that daggone treatment center for a year. Man, I learned a lot about Jerod in that treatment center. Learned a lot about Jerod. I thought I had the worst life in the world until I heard what happened to these men when they were children. I'm telling you, man, these guys got cigarette burns up and down their arms. They've been raped. Uncle Billy's got a hold of them. They've been, it's just awful. It's awful what one human being will do to another human being. It's awful, guys. And I'm in there with them. And man, it dawns on me, I'm bonded to these guys. And I haven't felt anything like that since Marshall University. I haven't felt anything like that since we played football, since we were in the locker room. And I thought, man, I like the way this feels. I like this way this feels. Man, don't get me wrong, I love my wife and I love my son. But daggone, it's so good to see you all. You know what I mean by that? I love my wife, but God, I'd love to see y'all once a week. So I'm thinking, I got this notebook and I wrote down all these things, and I'm like, I'm going to design a treatment center based on football. Everybody says, what? I said, it's based on football. We all got roles. I'm the enforcer. Mike's the star. John's the brains. Every team has this. So why wouldn't a treatment center work if we had all that? And man, we'll ask you to give us your best personality. If I can get your personality all the way out so that we don't lie, cheat, and steal from one another, surely that'll work. Man, and I wrote it down. And I got these little journals, and I'm writing this treatment center. And when I'm getting ready to graduate after a year, the counselor says to me, he says, Jerod, if you can stay sober for a year, I'll give you a job. I said, bet. And I left that treatment center and moved in with my ex-wife, Kate's stepmother, and she put 2x4s on the doors, and I lived in the basement. I couldn't make it up the stairs. I had to leave out the back, and I had to pay her rent. I mean, I'm married to you. You got me paying rent. She's like, you're married to me because I ain't got the paperwork done yet. Man, I get a home group and I start going to these meetings, and I go to these meetings and these men are happy and peaceful. And I don't understand that because I'm the angriest man on earth. And there's this guy in the meeting, and he is a philosophy professor at the University of Kentucky. And every time we go to the meeting, it starts, and he says, today I was sitting on my deck drinking a cup of joe, and a hummingbird landed in the dogwood tree, and I knew JC had my back. I'm like, you serious? I got $200,000 in debt, $75,000 in child support. You're talking about a hummingbird? Man, he does this every day. Gets to Friday, and he says it, and I cut him off dead sentence. I said, let me tell you something, buddy. We both can't be here Monday. I said, I got real world problems. And I seen you get out of your BMW, and it is so hard for me not to mug you. I can take all your stuff if I want it. And I'm going to do it if you don't shut up about JC and the tree. Man, my sponsor, Grace, he said, you get out of the meeting right now. He said, you owe that guy an amends. I said, yeah. I'm gone. I'm out. This sucks. I get home. I call my sponsor, said, maybe I was wrong. He said, make amends on Monday. And I did that. Hey, Lexington, Kentucky gets hit with an ice storm. When Lexington, Kentucky gets hit with an ice storm, all the trees fall down. I have a company. The name of my company is Anything You Don't Want to Do. And I hand out business cards at AA, because AA people, they'll tell you to paint the fence. It should be 20. They'll give you 200 because they're trying to help another alcoholic. So I hand these cards out, and they say, anything you don't want to do. It's the name of my company. But when these trees fall, I go to Lowe's and buy a chainsaw. And I go door to door in Lexington, and I say, hey, man, I'll clean that up for $200. Takes me about an hour. I did 10 a day. Do the math. Yeah, pretty good money. And I get all the way back in the game. I get caught up on child support. I pay back all my debt. I end up with 3 trucks and 12 workers. And my nickname changes from gas can to chainsaw. And you'd see me walking around Lexington with a chainsaw on my shoulder. Man, I paid back all my debt. The reason I tell you that story is that's when I knew God was there. See, he sees a beautiful tree when there's a hummingbird in it. Same tree, and I don't think it's pretty till it's on the ground and broken. One tree, 2 men saved both our lives. Got to be a God. Got to be. You can't tell me different. Now, I'm not. My child will tell you, I'm not. You know, all I can tell you is if it's odd, it's God. That's all I can tell you. I'm not going to tell you how to believe, when to believe, where to believe. That's your business. That's your business. I'm never going to do that. I can just tell you my experience. Man, I run this thing. I'm making good money. And I stay sober a year. So now I'm 2 years sober. My phone rings in the treatment center. It's on the phone, and they say, hey, come on down. If you stayed sober. I said, I'm still sober. They said, come down and be a counselor. I said, well, what's that pay? They said, $8.50 an hour. I said, what? I said, I can't live on $8.50, dude. I said, I just made a couple $100,000 cutting down wood. So I go to my steps. I'm in the steps there. I go and I tell these men, I say, hey, man, they want me to go down there and be a counselor, man, but this Thomas Tree Service is really taking off. And they said, well, man, you know, maybe God's talking to you. man, I go home and, I got the wife to take the 2x4s down, and, we're married again and doing good. And I say, hey, they want me to be a counselor. She said, man, it took me 5 years to get you to be a husband. I hate to lose you, but I don't know. She said, talk to your son. That beautiful boy they took from me, they gave him back to me. They gave him back to me. They gave him back to me. And I call him. He's 9 years old at this point. And I say, hey, son, I'm going to go down here and maybe be a counselor. He said, don't do that, Daddy. I like where you're at. I want to see you every weekend. He said, don't do that. I said, okay, son. Love you, bye. About 15 minutes goes by. He says, Dad, he said, will they act like you if you work with them? And I said, well, that's the plan. He said, Dad, I think maybe you better go. That's a 9-year-old boy. How's a 9-year-old know that? Man, so I call him. I'm going to negotiate. I said, look, I'll do it, but I ain't doing it for $850. I said, I just ain't going to do that. And, somebody says, well, maybe God's talking to you. And I said, well, for $850, I can't hear him. And I negotiated. I got $10 an hour, and they let me move in the halfway house. So now I'm 2 years sober. I'm running a sober living in the evening, and I'm a counselor during the day, and I'm working with these guys, and I'm loving it. I'm loving it. It don't get any better than that. I can't believe I got to do this. And man, I'm still working on my treatment center that me and my grandmother discussed. I'm still designing it, and I'm down there, and a guy named Bob Neary that runs the whole thing for us sits in my group one day, and he says, man, you're really good at this. He said, I'm going to fly you to Florida and teach you how to do your job. This guy's a genius, man. He's the best counselor I've ever been around. He sees and hears things that you can't believe. And he trains me. And I show him my treatment center. He said, I like it. I like a football team. He said, come up with the behavior part of it. And I designed the behavior part of it. And he said, let's pick a curriculum. And we did that. We went with recovery dynamics. If you've been to treatment, you know what I'm talking about. I see it. So, anyway, that goes on and on and on. Sorry, guys, my mouth's getting dry. It goes on and on and on. And I designed this program. And I start working at this treatment center, and I say to the CEO who's in Las Vegas, this is the largest nonprofit treatment center in America. And I say to him, man, I wrote my own program. It's a prison program. Can I try to sell it? Get a jail to do it. And he said, you can, Jerod. They ain't gonna do it. There's laws. I said, okay, can I do it? He said, yeah. I draw a map around where I work, and I pick the 20 closest jails to me. And I go in and pitch this program to the jailers. And every one of them says the same thing. He said, nah, we can't do it. Jail number 19, I got one more jail after this. Jail number 19 says, walk in there, I tell the guy what I got, tell him my story. He said, Jerod, I'm a pastor at a church. He said, so I'm gonna go home, and on Sunday, me and my congregation are gonna pray about this for you. And I'll let you know. And he said, neither way, you're the winner. I said, how so? He said, because my congregation's powerful. They're going to pray for you. Yeah, I like that, but I want the deal. I want the deal. And he calls me. He says, we're going to do it. And I said, well, we need to negotiate terms. He said, no, I'm going to pay you $28,000 a year. I said, man, that ain't much of it. He said, you want it or not? I said, I'll take it. And I moved to a town I'd never been in. Got a Section 8 apartment, just barely making it. And every other Friday I go to Fazoli's, and every other Friday's payday so I can get a piece of cheesecake. Let me tell y'all something. To this day, that's the best cheesecake I've ever eaten. Every other Friday, it's the best cheesecake you could eat. And that's how I celebrate my recovery. And man, we have a program, and it's based on a football team. I got every one of my buddies is represented in that treatment center. We got everything. And after 1 year, We have the highest recovery rate in the state of Kentucky and the lowest recidivism in the United States of America. And man, small town newspaper writes a story. My beautiful wife takes that story. My wife is the superstar of my family. My wife is a lawyer. She's the key lab director. She runs a program for lawyers with drug and alcohol problems and mental illness. She actually was appointed to run the entire United States. So if you're a lawyer in the United States, some of your policy and procedure with drugs and alcohol were written by my wife. She's a superstar. But she goes to this national meeting and she says, I want you to see what my husband did. And one of the guys' wife works at CNN. And CNN says, I want to talk to him. And CNN comes down and they follow me around the jail for a week. And then they air the story about Marshall football and how this is a football team and how we designed a treatment program. And it airs, I'm making $28,000 a year. It airs on CNN. Monday, my phone rings and a lady says, hold for the mayor. I'm thinking, I make more than the mayor. I mean, how's he got an assistant? Hold for the mayor. I said, I'm holding. Guy says, Jerod Thomas? I said, yes. He said, this is Rahm Emanuel. He said, I'm the mayor of Chicago. I said, sure you are. Sure you are. He said, I saw you on CNN. Liked the program. Want to talk about it. I said, talk. He said, I want it in Cook County. I said, okay, I'm going to call you back. I called my CEO in Las Vegas. I said, the mayor of Chicago called and he wants me to come down and do that program. He said, Jerod, he said, can you do that? I said, yep, I can. And he said, okay. And then FedEx hit the next morning at my little Section 8 apartment with a plane ticket, 3 credit cards, and a place to stay in Chicago. And I got on a plane and went to Chicago, and I got the opportunity to design the largest prison program in the United States of America. And got to negotiate a $5 million deal. And you know, the funny thing is I did all the contract work because I'm married to a lawyer. So I put it all on a legal pad. I said, I want this, 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 and this. And I sent it to my wife, and then she wrote a contract. And I actually got the contract signed before I left town. So I called the CEO, and he said, do I need to see the contracts? I said, it's a little late for that. And he said, what? And I said, it's a $5 million deal. Then he goes, I send it over, about an hour goes by, and he calls me. He said, how did you do this? I said, I'm married to a lawyer. And he said, but how'd you come up with your price points? I said, I was raised by Joe Thomas. You know, we got one rule. If you were raised by Joe Thomas, you buy it for 5, you sell it for 10. You know, I understand money, always have. So I put 15% interest for a mistake I'll make, and I overstaffed it and overthink. So I leave there, and I go back home, and the CEO flies into Kentucky, and we eat in Lexington, and he gives me a third of the company to oversee. I'm in charge of Kentucky, Florida, and Tennessee. There's 4 of us. So there's him, vice president, and then the 4 of us. And I go all over the United States of America designing treatment centers. I did a HIV-only treatment center down in Miami. Had a gentleman give me a hotel. You know, people with HIV can live as long as us if they'll just take their medicine. What happens is when you get high, you usually don't take your medicine. So I did an HIV-only treatment center in a hotel down in Miami. I flew out to Las Vegas. If you guys have seen Wynn Casinos, he gave me 200 acres, and I bought 200 tents, and we started a homeless treatment center. Today, those 200 acres have 10 buildings on them. And my specialty became designing treatment centers. That was my gift that God gave me. Turns out it wasn't football. So I wasn't supposed to be Mike. I wasn't supposed to be Matt. I was just supposed to be Jerod. That's all I was supposed to be. I was just supposed to be Jerod. You know, we all can't catch 128 a year. Can't do it. Damn near impossible. You know, So you just got to be Jerod. And what I found out is that Jerod's all right. Jerod's not a bad guy. Jerod's not a bad guy. Man, my life took off just flying. But I tell you what the best part was. I knew this disease. I'm a Thomas. I know the disease. And, everything's going great at this point. I've got my son back. But, man, you guys, my kid, good football player. Good football player. I didn't care if he never played a down. I didn't actually want him to mess with it after how bent up I got. But, man, just a good football player. And me and my son got real close. And he said to me going into high school, he said, Dad, are we going to do high school football together? And I said, son, no. I got to work. And I said, I travel all over the United States. And he says, Dad, he said, you help everybody's kids. It's me and you time. And I looked this kid in the eye, and I told y'all I said a prayer when I was in jail. And the prayer I said over and over is, Dear God, if you'll let me get sober so that I can be Cade Mitchell Thomas's father, I will spend the rest of my life helping others, and I will not live another bad day on this earth. And I said it over and over and over, and God gave me that. And I told him, I said, son, I am afraid if I quit my job, then I'll get drunk. And if I get drunk, I can't be your dad. Scared me to death. I ran into a guy named Guy Hughlett at an AA meeting. Look at that, Dante broke both of them, didn't I? Guy said, I got a nonprofit. We got $13,000 in the bank. We got 12 clients, and I don't think we'll be open next month. Would you take it over? Guys, I'm making a pretty good living at this point in my life. And I said, I don't know. And I took a leap of faith so that I could be with my boy. And I chose him over the money. Man, guys, his high school football was so much fun. And I ain't talking about the games. I'm talking about the build-up. I'm talking about getting in your car in Lexington, Kentucky, driving 3.5 hours to the middle of Tennessee, getting a hot dog and popcorn, and watching a healthy boy run around the field. The whole routine, I loved it. Best 3 years of my life. Man, he was great. I missed one game. Because what I did is I took over that treatment center and I negotiated a contract with the Department of Corrections to take on 8 programs. And the only time they could meet me was Friday at 3:30. And I was torn, but I had to do it or else my nonprofit was going to go under. And I told him, son, I probably won't make it to the game. He said, Dad, it's all right, go do your thing. And I get that contract signed, and it's like 15 till 5, and I tell my wife, if we leave right now, we'll probably catch the last 2 minutes. We leave all the way across Tennessee, we catch the last 2 minutes. She's, Charity's fine. I said, but I'm not. And, man, that was the game before they went to the playoffs. And it was nip and tuck, and I turn on the news. Now, you guys, I ain't missed a game. I turn on the news, 21-21, 40-yard pass, Cade Mitchell Thomas into the end zone, playoffs we go. That's the game I missed. But my son was a great football player. My son was also an alcoholic, and I knew it. I knew it because I know it. I know what it looks like. And his mom called me his senior year, and she said, hey, Cade's running around with some really bad kids, and I think he's going to get in trouble. I said, honey, he is the bad kid. He is the one. It's not them. If they get away from him, they might be all right. But he's the problem. Man, it's hard to parent when you're a crackhead because my son saw all that I did, so it's hard to parent after that. But I've got to decide, do I love him or do I not? And nothing says I love you like no. You ain't doing that. The word no says I love you better than any word you'll ever have. Man, Cade went off to college, and the best 3 years of my life were followed by the worst 4 years of my life. Because I laid in bed every weekend and I said, God, don't you take his boy from me. I tried so hard to get him back. Don't you take him from me. And I knew the phone was going to ring, and I knew he was going to be dead. And what's worse, I knew he was going to probably kill somebody. Because his PSI report will read just like mine. Because mean men raise mean men. It's fact. My phone rang on a Sunday evening, my son's senior year, and he said, Daddy, I need help. I said, I got you, baby. Daddy's coming. And I got him his best Christmas present I could have ever got him. I stuck him in a treatment center. His mom was so mad at me. She said, who puts their kid in treatment on Christmas? I said, it's going to be the best Christmas of his life. Trust me on this. He went down to that treatment center, learned how to do this. You know, the one thing about my son is my son grew up in treatment centers. So his heroes weren't mad. His heroes were Bob, the triple felon. I mean, he loved them. He loved those felons. I mean, he'd run around the treatment center with them all the time. I mean, his heroes were people who were broken and helped others. So that's what he saw. That's what he knew that like I knew football. You know, that's all he saw. His senior quote was, you guys will love this, we relax, we don't struggle. That was his senior quote. I mean, who puts that in there? And he went to treatment. You know, the hardest thing about getting sober is if you are an athlete, and I am an athlete, and I was around athletes, you know, we are taught to fight until the final whistle blows. And in recovery, the key is to surrender. And that's so odd to us. You know, surrendering is just impossible for people who like to fight. You know, I told y'all, you know, Dante's here today, guys, and I traveled with his family. And I watched Dante go through all this ahead of me. I mean, he did all that I told you he did it too, way before I did it. And I remember thinking, man, I ain't gonna be like him. I ain't gonna be like him. You know, I mean, he's the guy. He's Matt. Meet the girls, he's got them. The money, he's got it. He's that guy. Man, and I remember thinking, I won't do that. And then my son says to me, he's on a cruise, and the guy says, you want some Coke? He just watched my entire life ruined. And Cade said he thought for 1.5 seconds, said, sure. Sure. You know, so I have to ride this again with him. My mother, who I didn't talk a lot about, kept drinking. And in the end, she made my dad look like a JV player. I mean, this lady chain smokes cigarettes and drinks vodka and does not come out of bed ever. She's in Savannah, Georgia, all by herself, drunk in a 300 square foot bedroom. Now, I don't talk to her anymore. I mean, we don't talk. We don't have anything. My sister calls and says, Mom fell down the steps, broke her back, broke her leg, head's cut wide open, bottle of vodka laying beside her. I need help. I said, do I drive? She said, no, Jerod, we can't do it. Like I said, don't call me. I'm out. She calls back and says, I'll do whatever you say. I said, all right, I'm on a plane. I flew down to Savannah, Georgia. My mom got out of rehab. I put her on the plane with me. I flew her to a treatment center. She's in a wheelchair. I had to pay out of my pocket to make the treatment center I sent her to handicapped accessible. It wasn't handicapped accessible because she was in a wheelchair. And I took her and I pushed her in her wheelchair. We're in the middle of the country in Kentucky. I mean, there's nowhere to go. And I'm pushing her in, and she looks at that girl and she says, can you believe my son's doing this to me? And the girl said, yeah, he loves you. And my mom says, are you really going to do this to me? And I said, no, you don't have to stay. She said, let's get to the car. I said, no, you ain't getting in my car, but you don't got to go in there. I'm going home. You can push that wheelchair as far as you can get down that interstate. That's your business. I'm out. So I'm just like, man, what's going to happen? Man, let me tell you something. My mom's a rehab warrior. I mean, she goes in that place and tears it up. I'm getting little stars on her homework, student of the week. Man, if my son stays sober today, I stay sober today, and my mom stays sober today, 3 generations of Thomases will go to bed sober, and this room should appreciate how amazing that is. It's the most amazing thing, and I'm going to tell you a few things that I usually don't do when I'm speaking, but it's changed a little bit because if you're in this room, I probably love you, and you probably love me. So I'm going to just change it up a little bit. I'm going to tell y'all something that I saw this week. I have designed, opened, operated 57 treatment centers across the United States. 23 at the Shepherd's House. You know, that little program they gave me with $13,000. We now have 23 treatment centers. We have 50-some employees, and we see some 600 people a day across 6 counties in Kentucky. You know, but they called me while I was getting ready to open a brand new inpatient treatment center. And they said, Jerod, we want you to come to Frankfort, state capital of Kentucky, and we want you to open a treatment center for women in prison. And I said, you know what, guys? I'd love to, but I can't. I said, I've got another treatment center opening. It opened Tuesday, by the way. So I got another treatment center opening. And I said, and I can't do it. And I said, but I'll give you my child. I'll let my son do it. See, my son's run my prison programs for the last 2 years. And I said, so if you want him, you can have him, but I can't do it. And man, he went down there and designed a women's program. He called on the way home, Dad, I've been to the Humane Society. We're going to train dogs. I said, what? He said, yeah, they're going to let us have dogs in the prison. He called me, Dad, I hired a paraplegic peer support specialist that can't talk. I said, what? I mean, it's just, you won't believe what's coming in this room. And man, that graduation was Tuesday, y'all. I opened a new treatment center, and he had his first graduation for his girls. Man, I walk in the room. There is 3 incest victims right here on the front row. I know their charts. You know, I'm looking at these people. I'm looking at their families. There's a girl driving a wheelchair with her mouth. There's dogs running through the room barking. I mean, it's chaos. It looks like a circus. And man, I started to cry. Because in my world, that's what God made the church for. That's the perfect church. That was it. I thought to myself, my boy, at age 26, just designed the perfect church. See, broken people fix broken people. Stray dogs bring in stray. I'm a stray dog. And stray dogs always take care of each other. I'm telling you, dogs, do we take care of each other? We always do, don't we? And can anything be done in a recovery meeting? I'm telling you, we've got carpenters, we've got plumbers, we got lawyers, we got doctors, we got nurses. We don't need you. We can be self-sufficient. We can be a team. And so in 1987, when Marshall University made their run to the national championship, these drug addicts get to take the same run with them. It's amazing, guys. It's amazing. And the teamwork is unbelievable. Now, let me tell you what's been great. I've got to do a lot of great things sober. Man, after that, I got a call from Ben Carson. Ben Carson was the director of urban development, housing and urban development. I've met with 2 governors. I've changed the policy and procedures and the legislation in Kentucky to allow people with substance use disorder to get Section 8 housing and HUD housing. I've got to write laws. I've testified before Congress. I've been on 3 governor task force. I got to do all that. And I don't tell you that to brag. I tell you that because what the world saw as junk. If I could just find somebody to love me anyway. If I could get you to see past the gas can. If I could get you to look inside here. And that kid that beat everybody up is scared to death most days of his life. Most days of his life, he's scared to death. He's afraid that this one didn't have a good enough dad. I am so afraid that I wasn't a good enough friend. And most days I made up in fear. I mean, most days of my life I made up in fear. What I'm going to do a little bit different today. Plum, Craig, Matt, Hoss, I love you. Todd, Kim, Mike, John, Karen, I love you. Thank you guys. Dante, I love you. Thank you guys for being here with me today. Ahmed, I love you. Thank you guys for sharing this day with me. But more importantly, thank you guys for raising me. Thank you guys for investing in me. Thank you guys for not quitting on me. If you hear anything here today, this is what I want you to hear. I am a phone call away. If you need me, just ask Princess. If you need me, I always answer the phone. I will not let the night fall on somebody that needs help. I'm in this for the long haul. St. Albans, West Virginia, I love you with all I got. Thank you.
Did we lose him? Let's all stand together. I know all of you appreciate the testimony that Jerod shared with us today. And I trust that you heard and can take with you the fact that God is a God who changes lives. I was listening when he said, dogs help dogs, right? See, the truth is all of us are dogs. There's not a one of us that doesn't need God. There's not one of us that isn't lost apart from Christ. And that's what we're all called to be. To lean upon the Lord, to let him change and transform our lives, just like Jerod's life has been changed and transformed, just like God's using him to touch and change other people's lives. So we rejoice in that incredible testimony. And I trust that each one of us are reminded about the testimony that each one of us have for what God is doing in our lives. And that we're not afraid to tell that story, especially in this season where a week from tomorrow is Holy Week, Palm Sunday, going down the road that Jesus took, that all of us could come back and find him. So I trust you think about your story as you go from this place. Would you join me in prayer as we close our time? Heavenly Father, we are so very grateful for Jerod's testimony. It is an obvious reality to all of us that you have touched his life in an incredible way, and you continue to work through him to touch countless lives. We thank you for the hope that springs forth from that. We lift up all of the addiction and treatment centers that are going right now. It's the plague of this day. And God, you're working powerfully through people like Jerod and others seeking to bring wholeness and hope and health to those who are broken by addiction. Father, we thank you that you are the changer of lives, a great transformer through your Son Jesus, that we can find what we were made to be and do. May all of us pursue you with a passion. Be wide open to you as you lead and direct and move in our lives. May all of us allow your word to speak to us in incredible ways as we seek to live day by day in this world. May we embrace the gift of life you've given us and the gift of life that comes through your Son, Jesus. Go with us from this place. May our lives glorify and honor you in every way. In the precious, powerful, wonderful name of Jesus we pray. Amen.